Right now, grocery store shelves across America are quietly going bare. Not because of one big dramatic event, not because of a headline you missed, but slowly, steadily, and consistently, the foods your family depends on are disappearing. And by the time most people notice, it's already too late. Today we're going to talk about 9 essential foods that are vanishing from stores right now, plus some bonus items most people completely overlook. We'll cover why it's happening, why it matters, and exactly what you can do about it before the window closes. Stay until the end because we're also sharing a practical action plan to protect your family's food supply no matter what comes next. Welcome to Secure Pantry, where preparation meets peace of mind. If you're new here, hit subscribe and give this video a like. Now, let's get into it. Let's start with something most people have never even heard of: canned butter. If you've never seen it on a shelf, that's already part of the problem. It's real butter sealed in a can with a shelf life of 5 to 10 years. Not margarine, not a butter-flavored spread. Actual butter. Compare that to the stick sitting in your fridge right now that'll last maybe 2 months, and you start to understand why preppers treat this stuff like gold. But here's the problem. Demand is rising and production is going in the opposite direction. Only 3 major US brands still make it, and 2 of them are dealing with serious setbacks right now. One had a factory fire, another is struggling with tin can supply shortages. Prices that were $8 a can last year have jumped to $14, and many suppliers are completely out of stock. If you find canned butter, buy it. Store it in a cool, stable place like a basement. A garage where temperatures swing with the seasons will shorten its shelf life fast. The window to stock up on this one is closing quickly. Next up is evaporated milk in pull-tab cans, and the pull-tab part actually matters more than you might think. When the power is out and resources are stretched, the last thing you want to be hunting for is a can opener. Evaporated milk is shelf-stable for 1 to 2 years, packed with protein and calcium, and can be reconstituted into regular milk or used straight in cooking. The problem is dairy plants are shifting priorities toward fresh milk and cheese because the profit margins are higher. Shelves that used to be fully stocked are now showing gaps and out-of-stock labels more and more often. People who take this seriously aim for at least 48 cans, rotating stock to keep everything fresh. You can substitute evaporated milk for fresh milk in almost any recipe without noticing much difference. Don't overlook this one. Now here's a quiet warning sign worth paying attention to. Small 6-ounce cans of tomato paste are vanishing from shelves. It sounds minor, but it's actually a signal about the broader health of canned goods in America. California produces 95% of the processing tomatoes used in the United States, and California is in serious trouble. Water restrictions, labor shortages, and rising production costs have hammered the supply chain. On top of that, tin-plated steel prices have gone up 40%, so manufacturers are making tough choices about which products are still worth making. Staples like tomato paste, which don't carry big profit margins, are getting cut first. For anyone building a food stockpile, tomato paste is a powerhouse. It turns plain rice, dried beans, and canned vegetables into something that actually tastes like a real meal. It anchors chili, soups, stews, and Spanish rice. Stored properly, it lasts up to 3 years. Stock up every time you see it because shortages are expected to continue well into next year. Moving on to something that carries real psychological weight: yeast packets. Those little 3 packs of active dry yeast are hitting critical shortage levels in many areas. Here's why. During the pandemic, home baking exploded. Manufacturers scaled up, then when things settled down, they scaled back hard. But the demand for home baking never fully went away. More people than ever are making their own bread, and supply hasn't kept up. Bread is one of the most powerful symbols of normalcy. Being able to bake a fresh loaf during a difficult time does more for family morale than almost anything else. Standard yeast packets last about 6 months in the pantry and up to 2 years in the freezer, but viability drops over time no matter how you store them. The smarter long-term solution is vacuum-sealed yeast bricks that last up to 5 years, or learning to maintain a sourdough starter, which gives you a living, indefinite supply of natural yeast at no cost. If you don't have at least 6 months of yeast stored right now, this is something to address immediately. Now here's one that surprises people: shelf-stable bacon. Real bacon, fully cooked, no refrigeration needed, stays fresh for 1 to 2 years. For anyone thinking seriously about long-term food storage, this is a revelation. Protein is one of the hardest things to stockpile in a way that actually tastes good. Canned meats exist, but flavor is usually the sacrifice. Shelf-stable bacon solves that problem. Think about what it means to have real bacon after days of plain rice and beans. The smell alone changes the mood of a difficult situation. It turns a bland survival meal into something that feels like a real moment of comfort. Morale is a survival resource, and this is one of the most effective morale boosters you can have in a crisis pantry. The problem is major brands have been discontinuing or back-ordering this product due to production issues, and it's becoming genuinely hard to find. If you see it on a shelf, buy everything that's there. Let's talk about something humble but deeply strategic: bulk bouillon cubes. At roughly 5 cents per cube, you can make a full cup of flavorful broth. That same cup in a can at the grocery store costs about $2. But the math gets even better when you think about storage. Hundreds of bouillon cubes fit in a single shoebox. That shoebox represents the broth equivalent of hundreds of cans at a tiny fraction of the cost and space. Bouillon completely transforms survival cooking. Plain rice becomes a savory side dish. Dried beans become a rich stew base. Bland vegetables become something worth eating. The sodium content supports physical effort and electrolyte balance too. Bulk containers are becoming harder to find and prices are going up. Aim for at least 200 cubes in your stockpile and buy bulk whenever you can find it. Now for 2 foods that don't get nearly enough credit: canned sardines and canned mackerel. These are the most nutritionally dense options in the canned fish category, and they're consistently overlooked in favor of tuna. Sardines and mackerel are loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, essential fats that support brain function, heart health, and reduce inflammation. In a prolonged crisis where stress is high and diet quality drops, those nutrients become genuinely important. They are an acquired taste, no question, but repeated exposure changes that for most people, especially when they're packed in olive oil, which improves the flavor and adds extra calories. The supply situation is getting tighter due to overfishing and climate-related changes in fish populations, and prices have roughly doubled in 3 years. Aim for at least 60 cans of sardines and 40 cans of mackerel. If you're new to them, start with 5 cans and experiment with different ways to prepare them before buying in bulk. Next up, and this one surprises a lot of people, bulk white sugar. Most people think of sugar as a baking ingredient, but in a preparedness context, it's much more than that. Sugar is a preservative. It's what makes homemade jams, jellies, and candied fruits shelf-stable without refrigeration. It's a dense calorie source that provides fast energy when physical demands are high, and historically, during economic collapses and wartime shortages, sugar has functioned as actual currency. There are documented accounts of it being traded for jewelry and valuables during periods of serious scarcity. Warehouse clubs are already starting to limit how much bulk sugar customers can buy at one time. Prices are climbing. Store it in food-grade buckets with tight lids, and it'll last indefinitely. Include brown sugar and powdered sugar for more versatility. And don't underestimate the morale value of being able to bake something sweet when everything else feels uncertain. Last in this group, cooking oils. Vegetable oil, canola oil, peanut oil, basic, essential, and increasingly scarce. Supply chain disruptions have hit cooking oils from multiple directions at once. Sunflower oil supply was badly hit by conflict in Eastern Europe. Palm oil faces export restrictions. Soybean oil prices are still elevated. Prices have roughly doubled in many markets and availability has dropped. Fat is non-negotiable for health. A diet built primarily on beans and rice without adequate fat leads to real health problems faster than most people expect. 1 tablespoon of cooking oil is 120 calories of pure fat, and that matters a lot when you're managing under stress. Store up to 12 gallons and rotate every 2 months to keep it fresh. Coconut oil makes a good backup with a longer shelf life, though it costs more and adds a coconut flavor to savory dishes. Don't let this category get overlooked in your planning. Now let's cover some bonus essentials that often get skipped in prepping conversations, but that experienced preppers consider absolutely critical. Powdered eggs first. Fresh eggs spoil quickly and need refrigeration. Powdered eggs work just as well in cooking and baking, reconstitute easily with water, and have a shelf life of up to 10 years in a cool, dry place. Shortages are already emerging and prices are rising as more people catch on. Start with a small can to see how your family handles the taste, then build toward at least a year's worth of egg protein. Right alongside that, dried beans. These might be the single most important survival staple of all time. Nutrient-dense, incredibly versatile, and with a shelf life that's effectively indefinite when stored correctly. They provide protein, fiber, complex carbohydrates, and essential vitamins. They can go into soups, stews, chili, side dishes, or even be ground into flour for baking, and they're among the very first items to disappear from store shelves when any kind of crisis hits. Prices for bulk bags have nearly doubled in 2 years. Store them in food-grade buckets with tight lids, and it'll last indefinitely. Focus on versatile varieties: black beans, pinto beans, lentils, and chickpeas. If you build nothing else, honey is one of the most remarkable foods in existence. It's been found in ancient Egyptian tombs, sealed for over 3,000 years and still perfectly edible. Stored properly, it simply does not expire. It's energy-dense, works as a natural preservative for other foods, and has real medicinal applications. Raw, unfiltered honey has documented antibacterial properties and has been used for wound care for centuries. Bee populations are under serious threat globally and prices are rising. Store raw, unfiltered honey in glass jars. If it crystallizes, don't throw it out. That's completely normal. Just warm the jar gently and it returns to liquid. Salt might be the most underrated essential on this entire list. The word salary literally comes from it because Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt. That's how valuable it was. Today, we take it completely for granted, but salt preserves meats, ferments vegetables, and extends the shelf life of dozens of foods without any refrigeration. It supports nerve function, muscle contraction, and electrolyte balance. And in a serious crisis, it becomes one of the most sought-after barter goods available. Stockpile at least 25 pounds of table salt along with kosher and sea salt for different uses. Store in airtight containers to prevent moisture and clumping. The cost is almost nothing, and the value is enormous. Instant coffee, and even if you don't drink coffee, stay with this one. Instant coffee has a shelf life of up to 20 years. It's lightweight, compact, and only needs hot water. In a crisis, caffeine helps maintain cognitive function, supports energy during physical work, and preserves the sense of daily routine that keeps people mentally grounded when conditions are rough. A morning cup of coffee is a ritual. Rituals matter more than most people realize when everything else has been disrupted. Beyond personal use, instant coffee is one of the most universally valuable barter items you can have. Almost everyone drinks coffee or knows someone who does. Individual packets are easy to trade and represent a real comfort that people will exchange goods for. Stockpile at least 25 pounds of table salt along with kosher and sea salt for different uses. Store in airtight containers to prevent moisture and clumping. The cost is almost nothing, and the value is enormous. So, now that we know what's disappearing, let's talk about why, because understanding what's driving these shortages is what separates someone who reacts to a crisis from someone who saw it coming. The first issue is supply chain fragility. The modern food supply chain is incredibly efficient, but that efficiency comes at the cost of resilience. When everything is optimized for cost and speed, there's almost no buffer when something goes wrong. Factory fires, labor shortages, shipping disruptions, international conflicts. Each of these sends ripple effects through systems that were never designed to absorb repeated shocks. What used to be isolated temporary problems are now becoming chronic, overlapping failures. The second driver is climate change, and its impact on agriculture is not future speculation, it's already here. California's water crisis is hurting tomato production right now. Droughts are reducing harvests across multiple regions simultaneously. Shifting weather patterns are disrupting the conditions that salt production, bee populations, and fishing industries depend on. This is reshaping what's actually available on your grocery store shelf today. The third factor is corporate profit priorities, and this one is largely invisible to most shoppers. Large food manufacturers make calculated decisions about which products are worth making. Foods with long shelf lives are inherently less profitable than fresh, perishable products that create repeat purchases. When margins get squeezed, those long shelf life items get cut first. Nobody is making these decisions to cause harm, they're making them to stay financially viable. But the effect on people trying to prepare is real and significant. The fourth driver is a self-reinforcing cycle. Rising awareness of shortages is pushing more people to stock up, which accelerates the very shortages they're preparing for. Preppers represent a small percentage of the population, but their collective buying behavior, quiet, consistent, and growing, is enough to create noticeable gaps nationwide. The more empty shelves people see, the more they buy. That cycle is already in motion. Now let's put together an actual action plan. The most important principle in food storage is climate control. Heat is the enemy. Oils go rancid, grains break down, canned goods lose nutritional value. The ideal environment is cool, stable, and dry, and for most people that means a basement, not a garage where temperatures swing dramatically with the seasons, not a shed or outdoor unit, a basement or an interior ground floor room that stays at a relatively consistent temperature year-round. This single factor extends the useful life of your stored food more than almost any other decision you make. Pest and moisture protection come next. Food stored in original packaging, paper bags, cardboard boxes, standard plastic bags, is vulnerable. Rodents and insects will find it. Moisture will damage it. The solution is food-grade buckets with airtight lids combined with oxygen absorbers for dry goods like beans, rice, and grains. Oxygen absorbers eliminate the oxygen inside a sealed container, which prevents both oxidation and the survival of pests and bacteria.
This combination is the gold standard for long-term dry food storage, and it's affordable for anyone. Rotation is the habit that keeps your stockpile from becoming a waste problem. The rule is simple: first in, first out. When you add new stock, move older items to the front and put newer ones behind them. When you cook, pull from the front. Nothing should ever sit long enough to expire without being used. A lot of people build stockpiles with good intentions and then never rotate them, finding years later that half of it is past its prime. Rotation is what turns an emergency pantry into something that actually works. Here's a piece of advice that sounds small but is genuinely important. Try your emergency foods now before you ever need them. Open a can of sardines this week. Make scrambled eggs with powdered eggs on a weekend morning. Cook your rice with a bouillon cube instead of plain water. This does two things at once. It tells you whether your family will actually eat these foods under stress, because a stockpile full of nutritious food your family refuses to eat is useless, and it makes these ingredients familiar, so using them in an emergency doesn't add to the psychological burden of an already difficult situation. Diversity in your stockpile is both a nutritional strategy and a psychological one. Food fatigue is real. Eating the same few things day after day, even adequate foods, wears people down in ways that affect mood, motivation, and decision-making. A diverse pantry that includes proteins, fats, carbohydrates, flavor enhancers, sweeteners, and comfort foods maintains the variety that keeps people functional and reasonably content even when external conditions are difficult. Build a stockpile that can sustain your family's well-being, not just their caloric needs. Finally, think about trade value. In extended disruptions, standard commerce often breaks down before official systems can restore it. In that gap, barter economies emerge fast. The items that become most valuable are not the most exotic or expensive. They are the everyday comfort items that most people failed to stockpile. Coffee, sugar, salt, honey. These are the currencies of informal trade, valued not by decree but by universal human desire for normalcy. Stocking these in quantity gives you not just food security, but real negotiating power. Here's the bottom line. Everything we've talked about today, canned butter, evaporated milk, tomato paste, yeast, shelf-stable bacon, bouillon cubes, sardines, mackerel, sugar, cooking oils, powdered eggs, dried beans, honey, salt, and instant coffee. These are not exotic prepper fantasies. They are practical, affordable, everyday staples that are disappearing right now for documented real reasons, with no clear timeline for recovery. The people who will be fine are not the ones who react when shelves go empty. They're the ones who acted when the shelves were still full. That window is still open, but it is closing. Stock up now, diversify your pantry, rotate your supplies, and build something that doesn't just keep your family alive, but keeps them comfortable, fed, and ready for whatever comes next. That's it for today. If this was useful, give it a like and subscribe to Secure Pantry so you never miss what we put out next. We'll see you in the next one. Stay prepared.